The night Leora stopped believing in miracles was the night her mother didn't come back. It was years ago, but the feeling still lived inside her ribs, like a door left open in winter. The world had never closed it for her. Just kept taking. Now it was Christmas Eve again, and the city wore its happiness like a costume. Strings of warm lights blinked above cobblestone streets. Couples carried boxes wrapped in ribbon. Children tugged at gloved hands and begged for candy canes. Leora watched all of it from the shadowed edge of the market square, hunched beside a broken fountain where the wind found every gap in her clothes. Her coat was a men's coat from a donation bin, too big in the shoulders, torn at the cuff. Her boots were mismatched. She'd stuffed paper inside the left one to keep the snow from biting her heel. Hunger sat in her stomach like a stone. People passed her the way people passed a cracked street lamp, eyes sliding away as if looking would make the world less safe. She didn't ask for money anymore. Not because she was proud. Because she was tired of the way kindness had become a coin people used to buy their own comfort. "Please," a child's voice said suddenly. Leora stiffened. It wasn't a begging voice. It was small and strained, like it had been squeezed out of a throat that didn't know how to ask. She turned. A boy sat just beyond the fountain's rim, half hidden behind a stack of empty crates. He couldn't have been more than 8 or 9. His cheeks were pale from cold, his hair damp with melting snow. A thin blanket lay over his legs, and beneath it, Leora saw the unmistakable shape of twisted braces. His hands trembled on the wheels of a small wooden chair, old, patched, its spokes uneven. He looked at her the way a person looks at the last open door. "I got lost," he whispered. They said I shouldn't be outside. But I was trying to find the lights." Leora's chest tightened. She glanced around. No frantic parents. No caretakers searching. Just strangers drifting by, too busy with their warm lives to see the child freezing within arm's reach. "What's your name?" she asked, keeping her voice gentle so she didn't scare him. "Eli," he said. "Eli Rowan." That last name hit her with something sharp, like a memory she didn't own. Rowan. She didn't know why it felt familiar. She shook it off and crouched beside him, ignoring the way her knees ached from sleeping on stone. "Eli," she said, "where were you before you got lost?" He pointed with a shaky finger toward the far end of the square, where a narrow alley cut between buildings. The house with the green ivy. The woman with the warm eyes. She said it's safe there. An orphanage. Leora knew the place, everyone did. It sat near the border of the old district, a sanctuary rumored to be protected by odd rules. People said no one who meant harm could enter. People said the owner was strange. People also said it was where unwanted children ended up. She swallowed. "That's not far. Why are you out here alone?" Eli's gaze dropped. His voice got smaller. "Some boys, they pushed my chair. They laughed. They said I should stay hidden because I'm broken." Leora's jaw tightened. She'd heard those words before, thrown like stones. She looked at his hands, red with cold and gripping the wheels as if he expected the world to shove him again. She pulled off her gloves, thin and worn, and placed them in his lap. He blinked. "But you." "I'll be fine," she lied, because poor people learn how to hand out pieces of themselves like they're nothing. She stood and gripped the chair handles from behind. "Let's go, Eli. Christmas doesn't get to leave you behind." She started pushing, careful over the uneven stones. The wheels creaked. Snow thickened in the air like ash. That's when the alley ahead darkened in a way that didn't match the night. 3 men stepped out. They weren't drunk carolers. They weren't lost tourists. They moved with the lazy confidence of people who thought the world belonged to them. One of them smiled at Leora, slow and ugly. Well, look at what the street gave us." Leora's stomach turned cold. The tallest man leaned down toward Eli, peering at the chair like it was a toy. "And what's this? A little prize with wheels." Eli shrank back, fear flashing across his face. His hands clenched, knuckles white. Leora stepped forward without thinking. "Back off." The men laughed. Like she'd told them the funniest joke. "Poor girl's got courage," another one said. He reached out and pinched the edge of her coat. Or maybe just stupidity. Leora's heart hammered. She had no weapon. No phone. No one looking. The tall one grabbed the chair handle. "We'll take the kid. You can go back to your fountain." Eli made a sound, half a cry, half a choke. Something inside Leora snapped. She slapped the man's hand away so hard her palms stung. "Don't touch him." The men's smiles vanished. The tall one's eyes narrowed. "You want to be a hero? Fine." He shoved her. Leora stumbled, falling into the snow hard enough to knock the air from her lungs. Her ribs screamed. Her vision blurred. She heard Eli's terrified gasp. She pushed herself up, shaking, and saw the men turning the chair sideways, dragging it toward the alley. No! Leora lunged forward, grabbing the chair's wheel. The metal cut her palm, but she didn't let go. The tall man raised his hand. Leora braced for the hit. It didn't come. Because a shadow moved, not from the alley but from the square itself. It was fast. Too fast for human eyes to follow. The air changed as if the night inhaled. The men froze. A figure stood behind them now, tall, motionless, wrapped in a long black coat that looked like it had been stitched from midnight itself. Snowflakes landed on his shoulders and didn't melt. His presence didn't feel like a man. It felt like an ancient thing wearing human shape. His hair was dark, swept back, and his skin was pale in a way that made the lantern seem warmer by comparison. But it was his eyes that made Leora's breath catch. Deep crimson, steady as a blood moon. One of the men whispered, suddenly uncertain. Who the? The figure spoke, and his voice was low and calm, like the final word in a courtroom. Remove your hands. The tall man scoffed, trying to regain his confidence. Mind your business. The figure stepped closer. No threat. No shouting. No dramatic movement. Just one step. And the street itself seemed to go quiet. The men shifted, suddenly aware, like animals sensing a predator they didn't understand. Leora's instincts screamed at her to run. But Eli's small voice trembled behind her. Leora? She blinked. How do you know my name? Eli's eyes were wide, fixed not on her, but on the crimson-eyed stranger. He knows us. The stranger's gaze swept to Eli. Something impossibly old, softened in his expression. The men tried again to laugh, but the sound came out thin. The crimson-eyed man reached into his coat. Leora tensed. He pulled out nothing more than a small silver emblem, shaped like a crescent moon. The moment the moonlight hit it, the air shimmered as if unseen doors opened. From the edges of the square, dark-clad guards emerged, silent, disciplined, their steps measured. Not police. Not soldiers. Something older. The men's faces drained of color. Who are you? The tallest stammered. The stranger didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. I am King Valerius of Eldrith, he said. And you are standing in the presence of a child under my protection. Leora stared, her mind refusing to accept the words. King Eldrith? The men backed away, suddenly shaking. Valerius looked at. Leora's heart wouldn't slow down. Even after the three men were dragged away, silent, pale-faced, their bravado gone like it had never existed. Her pulse kept pounding in her ears as if her body didn't trust the night to stay calm. The guards moved efficiently. No cruelty. No unnecessary violence. Just firm hands and a cold certainty that said, justice has arrived and it will not be bargained with. King Valerius stood in the falling snow like a statue carved from midnight. He didn't look at the men again. His attention went straight to Eli. The boy's breath came out in little clouds. He clutched Leora's worn gloves like they were treasure. Valerius crouched, slowly, carefully, as if he understood how easily frightened children could break. You are cold, he said. Eli nodded, trying to be brave. I'm okay. Valerius's crimson eyes flicked to the thin blanket, the old chair, the bruised fear hiding behind the boy's composure. Something tightened in his jaw, an emotion controlled so tightly it barely showed. Brave, Valerius murmured. But you should never have been alone out here. Leora found her voice at last, though it trembled. Who are you really? Valerius looked up at her. For a moment the world narrowed to his gaze, ancient, heavy, terrifying in its stillness. Then he said, someone who owes a debt. Leora blinked. To who? His eyes didn't leave hers. To kindness. That answer made no sense, and yet, it made her throat sting. Because kindness was the one thing the world had taken from her again and again. And here was a man who looked like a king from a nightmare, speaking of it like a sacred law. Valerius stood and nodded toward the ivy-covered building at the edge of the district. The orphanage. Warm light spilled from its windows, turning the snow golden where it touched. We will take him home, Valerius said, his tone not a question. Leora tightened her grip on Eli's chair handles. I can take him. Valerius's gaze drifted to her bruised cheek, the torn coat, the blood on her palm from the wheel. He noticed everything. I did not mean to insult you, he said. But you are hurt. And he is in danger. I've been in danger my whole life, she snapped, then regretted it immediately. Valerius didn't flinch. Instead, he said quietly, Then you understand why I will not allow it again. Something in his voice wasn't control. It was conviction. And it scared her more than his guards did. They walked together through the snow. Not side by side. Not close. But connected by the shared gravity of the child between them. Eli kept glancing at Valerius like he expected the man to vanish. Are you really a king? Eli whispered. Valerius's expression softened, barely but enough to change the air around him. Yes. Do you live in a castle? Yes. Eli's eyes widened. Do you have dragons? Leora almost laughed. Almost. Valerius's mouth twitched, the ghost of a smile. No dragons. Eli looked relieved. Good. Dragons are too loud. Valerius nodded solemnly as if Eli had made a very wise point. Agreed. Leora watched this exchange with confusion twisting inside her. A man like him, cold, feared, commanding, shouldn't know how to speak gently to a child. Yet he did. Like he practiced it in secret. They reached the orphanage gates. Leora braced herself for the usual, questions, suspicion, harsh voices. Instead, the iron gates opened on their own. As if the building recognized them. Leora froze. Valerius noticed. You feel it, he said softly. What is this place? She asked. A sanctuary, he replied. Protected by vows older than law. They stepped inside. Warmth wrapped around Leora so suddenly she swayed. She hadn't felt true warmth in months. The entrance hall smelled like bread and pine needles and something sweet. Cinnamon maybe. A Christmas tree stood near the staircase, handmade ornaments hanging from its branches. Paper stars, wooden moons, tiny stitched hearts. Children's laughter echoed from a common room. Leora's chest tightened in a painful way, because she remembered being that small once. Before the world taught her to be invisible. A woman appeared from the corridor, middle-aged, with auburn hair streaked with silver, eyes warm as candlelight. She looked at Eli first, relief flooding her face. Eli. Eli's shoulders sagged as if he'd been holding himself together by sheer will. Lady Eloan. The woman rushed forward, kneeling beside him, touching his cheeks with both hands as if checking he was real. You frightened me half to death. Then her gaze lifted to Valerius. And she bowed, deeply. Your Majesty. Leora's stomach dropped. So it was true. Not a prank. Not a delusion. A king stood in this hallway and everyone around him treated his presence like a storm you respected. Eloan straightened, her eyes flicking to Leora. Who is this? She asked, gentle but alert. Leora's throat tightened. I just helped him. He was lost. Eloan studied her bruises, the worn coat, the exhaustion. Her expression softened. You helped him, she repeated, as if it mattered more than Leora could understand. Valerius spoke. She protected him. Eloan's brows rose slightly, surprised, impressed. Then you are welcome here. Leora hesitated, uncomfortable with the word welcome. It felt like wearing someone else's clothes. Eloan guided Eli toward the common room. Come, darling. Warm soup. And then you sit by the fire. Eli glanced back at Leora and held out her gloves. You forgot these. Leora's throat tightened again. She took them but didn't put them on yet. Because she didn't want to lose the feeling of warmth in her hands. Warmth that had come not from fabric, but from a child trusting her. As Eli disappeared into the common room, Eloan turned to Valerius. I did not expect you on Christmas Eve, she said softly. Valerius's crimson eyes flicked toward the lights, the tree, the children's voices. Valerius remained standing near the orphanage hearth long after Eli was taken to the common room. The fire crackled softly, its warmth filling the space, yet he did not move closer. Fire was a human comfort. Vampires did not need it. But tonight he felt its pull. Leora sat on a wooden bench near the wall, hands clasped tightly in her lap. She felt out of place among the laughter, the paper stars, the smell of soup. Safe places always made her uneasy. They felt temporary, like kindness that might vanish if she leaned into it too hard. Eloan returned quietly, closing the door behind her. Eli is asleep, she said. Exhaustion finally claimed him. Valerius nodded. He is stronger than he knows. Eloan studied him carefully. You felt it, didn't you? Valerius's crimson gaze darkened. Yes. Leora looked between them. Felt what? Eloan gestured toward the corridor where Eli slept. That child carries something rare. Something ancient. Leora's heart tightened. He's just a boy. Valerius turned to her slowly. He is a boy, he agreed. And he is also proof that fate has a cruel sense of timing. Eloan exhaled and finally spoke the truth she had guarded for years. Eli was born during the last lunar convergence, she said. A night when mortal blood briefly aligns with the oldest magic. Most children born then are ordinary. But some are not. Leora shook her head. You're talking about magic like it's real. Valerius met her eyes. It is. Eloan continued gently, Eli's body is fragile. His legs never developed as they should have. His parents believed he was cursed. They left him at my gate in the middle of winter. Leora swallowed hard. People abandon children for less. Valerius's jaw tightened. His bloodline is older than this kingdom, he said. Older than my crown. Silence fell. Leora stared at him. What does that mean? It means, Valerius said slowly, that Eli carries the dormant ability to awaken life where there is none. Eloan lowered her gaze. The old prophecies speak of it. The child of broken body and unbroken spirit, born of mortal breath, who can grant what immortals cannot claim. Leora felt dizzy. You're saying he could? Yes, Valerius said quietly. He could give vampires children. The words hit the room like thunder without sound. Leora looked at the door where Eli slept. A small, scared boy who loved Christmas lights and hated dragons because they were loud. They hurt him, she whispered. People hurt him, because he was different. Valerius turned away. For the first time, Leora saw the crack in him. Not rage. Not arrogance. Grief. Every court in my realm would hunt him, Valerius said. They would cage him, worship him, drain him. They would call it honor. Leora stood suddenly. Then don't let them. Valerius looked at her, startled, not by her words but by her certainty. She stepped closer, fear shaking her voice but not her resolve. He's not a blessing. He's not a solution. He's a child. Something ancient shifted in Valerius's gaze. That night, as snow fell heavier outside, a vow was made. Not spoken aloud, but sealed all the same. Valerius stayed. That alone shocked the orphanage. Kings did not linger in places without thrones. But Valerius remained through the night, standing guard like a shadow that refused to leave. And Leora stayed too, at first because Eloan insisted, then because Valerius asked. Not ordered. Asked. Morning came wrapped in pale winter light. Leora helped in the kitchen, chopping vegetables with clumsy hands and used to abundance. Children peeked at her from corners, curious. Some smiled. Some stared at her bruises. She was used to being looked down on. She wasn't used to being seen. Later, Valerius found her scrubbing a table. You could have left, he said. She shrugged. So could you. You watched her work. You stood against armed men for a child who was not yours. So did you. No, Valerius said quietly. I arrived after. Leora stopped scrubbing. You still saved him. Valerius shook his head slowly. Power did. Not courage. She met his gaze. Then you don't understand courage. That should have angered him. It didn't. Instead, it unsettled him. Over the next days, whispers spread. Not about the king. About Leora. Some of the older staff treated her kindly. Others looked at her with suspicion, a homeless girl too close to royalty. One afternoon, a visiting noblewoman sneered openly. She smells of the street, the woman said, not bothering to lower her voice. Why is she here? Leora froze. She'd heard worse. But Valerius heard it too. He turned, crimson eyes calm and cold. She is here because she stood where others turned away, he said. And you are tolerated because you fund bricks, not because you understand mercy. The noblewoman went pale. The room went silent. Leora's hands shook. Later she confronted him. You didn't have to do that. Yes, he replied. I did. She looked up at him, emotions warring inside her. Why? Valerius answered honestly. Because no one defended you when they should have. That night, Leora cried, not because she was weak but because someone had finally named the injustice out loud. The bond between them did not bloom like fire. It grew like roots, quiet, relentless. On Christmas morning the orphanage bells rang. Snow fell gently, covering the world in forgiveness. Eli sat by the tree, laughing as children tore open simple gifts. His smile was brighter than the ornaments. Valerius stood beside Leora. You could rule beside me, he said softly. If you wished. Not as a reward. As an equal. Leora looked at him. This immortal king who had learned humility. I don't want power, she said. I want safety. For him. For children like him. Valerius nodded. Then you already rule something greater than kingdoms. He knelt before Eli. Every breath stopped. I will not take what you can give, Valerius said. I will protect who you are. Eli looked confused. I don't want to be special. Valerius smiled. A real one this time. Good. Then you will be free. Valerius turned to Aloan. This orphanage will be under my eternal protection. He turned to Leora. And you, he said gently, are no longer invisible. Outside, the city continued as it always had. But inside those walls, something had changed. Not fate. Just. And on that Christmas morning, the most powerful vampire king in the world learned the greatest truth of all. Love is not what you take. It is what you refuse to steal.